Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, we are really excited about this episode, right?
Ja, sehr gut. Yes, we are. I'm really excited. A couple of our favorite friends, family, community members joining us here. So I'm really excited. One, an industry veteran, arguably, and one trying to break into the industry. So
yes, and undoubtedly he will.
Undoubtedly.
Plenty of passion. So we're going to be hearing from two supply chain pros here. They also happen to be insiders at Supply Chain Now and really frequent contributors. I mean, if y'all have been a part of our live streams previously, you will know them right away. They're stars in their own right, especially from all the perspective they share on previous live streams. So looking forward to gaining their perspective and insights in person, as well as learning a little bit more about them personally. So stay tuned for that. Quick programming note, Greg. So today, if you like our live streams, check out our podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Subscribe so you don't miss anything like today's episode, which featured Mark Morley from Open Text. Greg.
Great episode. Man, what an interesting fella.
Oh, gosh. Deep knowledge on a variety. I mean, especially supply chain tech wise. I felt like we got a certification coming out of that episode, right?
Yes. And to quote Mark, the biggest company you've never heard of, Open Text, right? So.
Right. That is right. So you have to check that out wherever you get your podcast from. I promise you will not miss it. I also learned on that episode that I've been mispronouncing Yahoo for decades.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that. You have to tune in if only to hear Mark say that.
Right. That's right.
It sounds so appropriate when he says it.
Very, very distinguished. Okay. Let's say hello to a few folks. Moya Sora, hello, tuned in via LinkedIn Live. I apologize if I mispronounced that name, but great to have you here. Kavan, we've got a book on the way to you, sir. Supply Chain Management for Dummies. So stay tuned for that. Chris Jolly,
Holy
Freight
mackerel
podcast.
I figured
guru.
He'd be making an episode.
No kidding. Chris, great to have you here.
What an honor.
Claudia's back. You can't do a live stream without Claudia. Great to have you here.
Missed her. She was gone there for a while. I think working pretty hard.
Oh gosh, yeah. Those collective numbers that she shared with our team. We'll have to have her on to talk about that. Joseph Valentine. I had a great chance to chat with him this morning. He's back with us here. So hello, Joseph. Great to have you. We're talking baseball because he's a baseball guru. He played with two Hall of Famers, by the way. Kirby, Kid Griffey.
Right.
And Barry Larkin. So that was.
I got to say, he doesn't seem old enough to have played in those days, but
ain't that the truth?
But I think 12 years between minors and majors, right?
I think you're right. Few final shout outs. Maximilian, great to have you here via LinkedIn. Bizwadeep, also via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. Sophia's back. Looking forward to sitting down with her soon. Great to have you.
Yes.
Patrick Kelly, Nairobi. Patrick Kelly, of course, the produce industry podcast. Thank you for keeping
another episode with him. That was fun.
Yep.
Him and Michael Chavez. I love that guy. That spirit of that company, his family company overall is just fascinating.
That is right. And so Michael says, interesting comment. The Brave shirt we wore yesterday brought luck. You are right, sir, because the Braves scored 29 runs against we had a fish fry last night. It was awesome. It was awesome. So I see Joshua, Marthala, of course, Clay and Amanda kind of behind the scenes making it happen. Really appreciate what you both do. So with no further ado, Greg, let's say hello to, let's bring in Silvia Judy and Stefan Mau. Hey.
The swoosh.
So y'all are seeing everything on the other side of the coin today.
Yeah.
And, y'all heard the intro. We're delighted to have you both. We've really enjoyed, our whole team's enjoyed the perspective you've shared via comments, all the insights, some of the humors. Both y'all have a great sense of humor. And we're so
We're
We're
still
so
waiting on our jam delivery, however, Sylvia. No
so
pressure.
so
pressure.
for folks that may be new to our live stream, so Sylvia is a prominent, globally known jam and jelly maker based right here, right in Charleston, South Carolina, and we have a lot of fun with that on each of these episodes. But Stefan and Sylvia both are regulars in terms of our live streams here, always adding a ton of value to the conversations. And today, Greg, we're going to take a deeper dive with both of them and kind of flip the script a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to dig in and find out who they are, where they are, because where Sylvia could be of some interest to folks. Maybe even where they're from, because I don't know that anyone could know that from talking to you. So you might have to reveal that to the audience.
So for starters, let's start right there. So Greg's got some questions teed up in a minute, but for starters, Sylvia, what do you do, and also share where you're from and where you are.
Okay, here it is. Hi, everyone. I'm Silvia Judy, broadcasting right now live from Hamburg, Germany. And I'm actually right on the Ulster in a shopping area called Hamburger Hof. And it's kind of a little bit slow moving right now. But, you know, we are 6 hours ahead of you. And, you know, German law has it. You have certain restrictions when it comes to shop openings. So we're getting ready to close down here probably within the hour. But nonetheless, I'm born and bred from Hamburg. And I tell everybody I'm German by birth, South Carolinian by the grace of God. So I usually add my commentary from the beautiful island of St. John out there by the Kiowa River. And today I'm fortunate enough to actually do it from the other side of the Atlantic. And actually thoroughly enjoy the show always. And I was so delighted when you asked me to be on this live stream. I can't tell you how much fun this has been, and it's going to be. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Love it.
Was great. And you can't even tell that you're reading from the script. Kidding. I know from the heart. I really appreciate that. That was very, very good. So it's great to have you on finally. I mean, I feel like you're on with us every time anyway, but it's great to let everybody get to see you and meet you, and I'm glad you had safe travels.
Thank you.
And we hope for your return soon. I'm a big fan of St. John, by the way.
So Sylvia, we're gonna learn a little more about you in just a moment, but Stefan, same thing. You know, where are you from, and where are you now?
Yeah, born and bred in Einbeck, a little tiny town somewhere in Lower Saxony, somewhat North Germany. Moved here when I was about 25, 2 years, West Palm Beach, Florida. Not too bad a place to be at. Just very humid. It was always a fight. And the last more than 6 years now is Texas. So I'm getting Texasized. It's a lot of fun. I like Texas a lot. That's for sure.
So one of my favorite comments, Greg, that Stefan shared a few weeks back is we were trying to figure out, in Atlanta, you're an Atlantan, right? If you're a Charlestonian, if you live in Charleston, you're a Charlestonian. And we were trying to figure out what folks call Dallas residents. And Stefan, what did you share with the group?
Well, my favorites are either cowboy or partner.
Well, you put a T. Yes, Greg, he put a T in that partner.
Partner.
But when partner is what distinctly stood out in his comment, and loved it. So really have enjoyed interacting with both of y'all. All right. So moving right along, let me say hello to a few folks. So our friend Nerfod is here with us, always keeping the insights and the jokes coming. So great to have you here, Nerfod. AA is tuned in from the air capital of the world, which is where, Greg?
Go Shocks, Wichita, Kansas.
That's right. We have got Corinne Bursa, which is about to take the podcast industry by storm with Tech Talk, all about supply chain tech. So stay tuned for that. Hello, Corinne. Jenny Froome is here from South Africa, as is Memory from Johannesburg. And finally, Benjamin Goldklang. Stefan and Silvia, we can't use that hire Ben hashtag moniker anymore, can we?
Right. Ben
King
hired.
of Queens now.
Yeah.
That's right. King of Queens.
I have to say he's been a little MIA lately, so he better be working. If he's going to be joining us, he better be working.
All right, so let's talk about Silvia. Back to you. What do you do now? You've got a really interesting role, and for that matter, history and journey. But what do you do now?
I am the branch manager for a company called Emo Trans Incorporated. It's a company that was founded the same year I was born, so I'm not going to tell you what year it was.
1990.
But they've been around the block a time or two.
Let me check Google.
And I actually opened up their Charleston branch about almost 7 years ago now. Thoroughly enjoy the company. It's a privately held single owner organization. And, you know, the true meaning of the German word Mittelstand holds true for Emo Trans. We're a mid-sized organization and we're still very customer centric and focused. And I think that's what makes us a little bit unique in the current environment, because especially during COVID, the first priority of our chairman, Mr. Joachim Frigger, or Joe Frigger, as we all know and love him, it was his people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks volumes of the culture in the organization and the leadership. So that's kind of where I'm hanging out right now, hoping to do bigger and better things one of these days for the organization, to be more in a global role again, which I thoroughly enjoy.
So appreciate you sharing that. There's one aspect about your background I'd love for you to share a little bit more about, and that's you were breaking through some obstacles. So the earlier organization, earlier in your journey that you worked for, you were the youngest female executive in training in the company's 93-year history, if I've got that right. Tell us more about that.
Interesting story. I started out right after I graduated from the Realschule, it was a 10-year high school program. You know, in Germany, we have a different education system, or used to have it differently. And it was basically staggered by 9 years, 10 years, or 13 years. And depending on your academic career, that's kind of how you fit in. And of course, it was all grade driven, needless to say.
Mm-hmm.
At the age of 15, I had my 10-year graduation. And at that particular time, nobody was particularly interesting to talk to a snotty teenager from Hamburg, having the grand idea to get into freight forwarding. And the reason why I got so passionate about it, my father is retired merchant marine, and back in the 50s and 60s, he was out on the true freighters. And my uncle Ernst was a machinist for Hamburg Süd, and my father worked for Hamburg Süd as well, went out to sea. So I grew up in the port of Hamburg. The port itself has fascinated me, and I actually sent my first application for an apprenticeship program to Hapag-Lloyd, which is the flagship carrier here in Hamburg, Germany. And they said, well, you don't have good enough education. We don't want somebody like you. So then I figured, okay, how do I get to see the world? I sent an application to Lufthansa. And in true German fashion, Lufthansa wrote me back. They said, you're too short and you're too fat. We don't want you as a flight attendant.
Gracious.
So I said, okay. There we go. And I sent an application to a small freight forwarding company, which was well established. It was a Jewish company next to Valentine at Hapag-Lloyd. And they were all related, you know, Johann Balin and Max Grünhut, which was the company where I finished my apprenticeship program. And because I was so young, I had to bring my mom to the interview. And lo and behold, my mother had just returned from visiting her brother in San Francisco. We get into the personnel director's office, and he had a huge picture behind him of the Golden Gate Bridge. So my mother, who is the most fascinating salesperson you will ever have to meet, she's like, oh my goodness, I just got back from San Francisco 5 days ago. Needless to say, I got the job.
Probably didn't
And
say it.
2.5 years later, I finished my apprenticeship, and I actually went and visited my uncle in San Francisco, pretty close to the end of my apprenticeship program. And okay, I know we're on live internet radio, but now it doesn't matter anymore because all the people that it mattered to are long deceased. But I actually cut class the last 3 weeks of my program because I wanted to go to San Francisco. And in my infinite wisdom as a 17-year-old, I decided I'm going to go and visit the branch office of Max Grünhut in San Francisco, not realizing that the president of Max Grünhut USA was there that day. Stumbled in and I started talking to him, and he's like, "Your English is perfect. Would you be interested in coming over here?" I said, got a little problem. First of all, I haven't graduated yet. Second of all, I'm here on vacation and I cut class. He said, "I like you. I like your spirit." So he actually sent a fax. We made a deal. He said, "If you graduate with a B- or better, I'll bring you over here." And at that point, my grade point average was probably somewhere hovering C- F.
I was that good too. Yeah.
But you made one of your first business deals.
Oh, yes.
Clearly you delivered.
I did.
And then he delivered to beautiful San
He
Francisco.
did. 2 weeks after I graduated with B-, I was on the Pan Am flight, Clipper class from Hamburg, Germany to San Francisco, and the rest is history.
Love it. I love it. And there's probably so much more to that story. We'll have to dive in deeper later. But thank you. Hey, it takes. I really admire your spirit and your passion and your willingness to. Other folks took notice of that undoubtedly, and I bet you impacted their journey. So I appreciate you sharing here that story here, Silvia.
She needs her own episode, that's for sure.
That's right.
Well,
Greg.
the old saying is, A students work for B students at companies founded by C students. So
there's hope yet.
Sylvia, I love the honesty of how you presented that. And clearly, I think if there's any lesson there, it's that grades don't really matter. I mean, you either got it or you don't. And clearly, you've got it. So
thank you.
Well said.
That is important. Memory says that. Such honesty.
Yes.
Right.
So Stefan, let's dive a little deeper with what you're doing and a little bit of your professional journey as well. And memory, we admire your honesty, as Greg said.
Yeah, after school, I went to the 13 years of school. It was definitely less fun than I wanted to, and I was about the same grade area than Silvia. I think it was a little worse than that. Isn't it? Worst point at like
any worse.
So this is where they send the C students, is the U.S.
That was actually many years later. But yeah, after school, I first started as an apprentice as a car mechanic, since I was just so done with school. The last thing I wanted to do is go to university. And I think we actually here talked on the show about apprenticeships a while ago. Since it's a very different concept, and I'm pretty sure Silvia back then for you was the same. At least for a car mechanic, for the first year, you just go to school only in your vacation, or basically on the school vacation, you go to a dealership you have a contract with, and during your vacation you work there. So your vacation is not a vacation. And then year 2 and 3, you go back to the car dealership full time and just go to school once a week. So you get your theoretical training and then your practical training. But in the end, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But it was not the boss or the owner of the company who then said, you can do a little bit more as a car mechanic. Why don't we do this? He actually said this in the very first interview I ever had before I even started being a car mechanic. So he basically is my idol and mentor. And now actually we're very good friends. So that's awesome. Said, just car mechanic with your 13 years of school might be a little too boring. Why don't you, do your car mechanic? After that, you do an apprenticeship as an automotive merchant. And then there's a school here next city, which is, for a business economist in automotive. And they even have a program where you can go to Florida and study there for a year, you know.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah, but guess what? 8 years later, I did all of that. I put my MBA behind the two, since one of my professors asked me if I wanted to do that. And thankfully, my father always supported anything that had to do with education. And yeah, that's what got me then here. After that, I started selling cars, which was horrible. After that, I started selling car service, was a little better. But in my nativity, what I didn't realize, service was actually more sales and sales. Since, you know, it's not 1 or 2 sales a day, it's 20 sales a day. And you tried, of course, to have to, you know, always upsell on every repair. And this just didn't really agree with me. And yeah, then in the end, I worked for Firestone for 1.5 years. They actually have a great management trainee program where they send you to many classes where they teach you, you know, how to interpret numbers, how to look, you know, for the numbers, what you need to do to improve the numbers, and so on and so forth. So that was a lot of fun. And then in the end, I'm at the German printing press company, Koenig & Bauer, as an accounting clerk. So basically, the minute I found supply chain, I got a call from the CFO of Koenig & Bauer, at least the American location, said, hey, you want to come back? Since I used to work for them, but I didn't get along with my boss, so he kicked me out. And then he called me back, said, hey, we want you back, and the other guy is leaving, so you can come back now. And yeah, now
So he was the problem all along, Stefan.
Excuse me?
So he must have been the problem all along.
That's what took me 3 years to find out. But yes, he managed to get rid of multiple people, and then they finally asked him to leave. So I thought for 3 years, I thought, what's wrong with me? And now I know, hey, it's what's wrong with him.
Amanda really likes your comment there. Service is more sales than sales. A lot of truth there, right?
Especially in the States.
And longer hours too.
That's right. And Sophia says, it is said that one must experience sales at least once in a lifetime. Sophia, that is excellent sentiment. And I would wholeheartedly, I think everyone should experience sales and wait tables. Amen. And we'd have a kinder, gentler global community, right?
Mm-hmm. After our podcast, drive a truck.
That's right. Yes. And Stefan's referring to Josue, who joined us last week, which offered some really eye-opening perspective.
It was awesome, yeah.
All right, so Stefan, one final follow-up question for you, and then we're gonna ask you real quick about why you're so passionate about supply chain. But Stefan, you are currently going through a lot of professional development, so you can really break in with both feet into formally supply chain, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I discovered supply chain the very first time in January. Before that, I was, let's say, just every other person out there. I know what supply chain is, but I have not a single idea what it actually means. And so I just started looking around. There actually came my second mentor into play. I met him in my MBA course, and after a few years of selling things, which wasn't the biggest fun. I just talked to him for a while on the phone, and he actually sent me one of those ABCD personality tests, and I did this, and then we analyzed the thing. He said, you know what, talking all day to people like you're doing now, that's not for you. Oh yeah, really. But what you need to do is like a mix between working by your own and then up once in a while talking to other people and working in teams. And he is actually in supply chain, has been there a long while. And as a chief supply chain officer of a marketing company, Helm, up in Michigan. And then he showed me what supply chain is, and I thought, okay, that's very interesting. And then the next thing I did is I bought a Supply Chain for Dummies book and also a Operations for Dummies book. I read them, and after the end, I thought, why I've never been in supply chain all my life. It cannot get any more interesting than that. And then that's what got me started on it.
Love that. So before I pass the baton here to my good friend Greg White, Silvia, tell us why are you so passionate? It sounds like from the beginning about the global supply chain community.
I think the passion started when I was a toddler, and it started out with when my father opened up his trunk, and we had boomerangs from Australia. We had, back then it was legal, not anymore, crocodiles, from taxidermy crocodiles from Egypt. We had flags from all over the world. And, you know, we had the postcards that my dad sent. And back then it was old 45s on postcards that he sent to my mom from every port. So that's what we were listening to on our little record player. And we always had this global thinking strategy. And, you know, coming up or being of a generation of Hamburg originals, and my mother survived World War II barely, and I had some pretty rough times. So my grandfather at the time always told us, you know, don't discriminate, be open-minded, and think of the other person's feeling, be respectful. And, you know, we always wanted to look beyond the obvious, and we always wanted to travel, which is extremely un-German. I hate to tell you. I think Stefan and I are very different in a sense, because most Germans are wanting to stay in their hometown. They start working for one company, and that's the same company that they retire from. I mean, that's kind of like the history of it. And having, as a kid, riding my bicycle into the free port of Hamburg and going into the banana quay, which was the banana pier where the banana boats came in. And we got us fresh fruit like oranges, bananas, all of that. And we kind of smuggled it through the border, coming out of the free port of Hamburg and going back home. And it was like so exhilarating. You see all these, you have these different smells. And, you know, in Hamburg, you have what's called the Speicherstadt, which used to be the warehousing district back in the days. And, you know, the port of Hamburg is over 900 years old. So just from the history itself, I was always fascinated by it. And, you know, supply chain is something that I think most people don't recognize the importance of it. If you bought it, a truck brought it. So it's very important that people understand the intricacies of logistical management behind it. And, you know, over the last, I've been doing this now almost 40 years. I'm in year 39 now, but I've learned so many different aspects of global supply chains, and I've had so many opportunities that were afforded to me. I mean, I love going to the Czech Republic to a little place called Jilemnice, where they make sausage casings that are imported into Swansea, South Carolina. I was actually on site, Greenfield, 2SOP for the Volvo plant in Ridgeville, Building C. And most of the components, which is a conveyor system, was imported from Beijing and Shanghai, China. And I was actually on site in my pink hard hat and steel toe boots with pink laces. And I started a trend at Volvo, I might add, because then all of a sudden, all the female engineers started wearing pink hats. But I was there 2.5 months in the heat of the summer and unloading every container. You know, I love hands-on logistics.
It comes across. It is effusive. It comes across so much, a lot of passion in what you share. And we want to get a picture of you in the pink hard hat. So you got to share that with our team. So I'm gonna pass the baton to Greg here, but Stefan, as we do, please share about your passion and you shared a little bit about how you discovered the industry, but what really fascinates you about global supply chain?
Yeah, basically, it started back then when I was an apprentice in the car dealership, and as a mechanic and also as an automotive merchant. Of course, we had programs to look for parts and so on, but there was then a newer generation of program, and I read up about the program a little bit, and then I just went to my parts manager and said, hey, this program is so much better. Why don't we have this? Yeah, we don't. And that was and said, okay, so there is more out there, but people are not using it, and why is everything so complicated? And I mean, it was already 2010 or so, but we were still working with a DOS-based program. It's like, yeah, there must be better things out there, more things out there. So when I then later on actually discovered supply chain, I thought, you know what, that is pretty awesome. And I actually really think that, the software and technology, that is what really can, drive supply chain and interconnection. Since everything goes and dies with the programs. The programs are way too complicated. People don't want to use it. If the programs are nice and easy, then everybody adapts it quick. I mean, the apps that make it the biggest, may it be Instagram or, any kind of other apps, the ones that are most intuitive, they go. I mean, that's why everybody's complaining about SAP, since you have to click 30 buttons to get to one point where you want to go.
Right. And you go through 100 green screens, right, that remind you of when your grandparents were using computers in the 70s. Yeah.
But yeah, then I just, figured out everything should be so easy, especially in the digital age, that we send out letters with invoices, that's kind of a joke, or we get about 100 checks a week, that feels kind of ancient to me, but this is just what it is, just status quo. And as long as it works, don't change it, even though if it's highly inefficient and checks get lost in the mail, we get mail that doesn't belong to us, and then I have to forward it to where it's supposed to go. We have seen checks take up to 3.5 weeks to get to us, but the customer is on COD, so cash in advance, and they're unhappy and we are unhappy just because of inefficiencies in the system. And then the biggest boost in tech confidence I got when I saw the SAP Sapphire Reimagined, especially when they praised HANA in the opening keynote together with Porsche. And that's what technology can do. People just have to be willing to give it a try and really jump over the initial hurdles to make it. As soon as it runs. Just getting it, of course, is, as I can see, supposedly takes years to make an ERP work, even though they said it need 4 months to make it work.
Well, so I want to acknowledge something. I want to ask you guys both some questions, but I want to acknowledge something, and that is Stefan is a sponge. He is a learner. He is a seeker. So he and I have had some conversations offline about what to do and how to find the right information. And, his gift is analytics. And that is such a big part of supply chain. We keep talking about control towers, and we talk about visibility, and all of that is enabled by analytics. And coming out of finance and into this industry, it's just reminded me, Stefan, as we've talked, of something Scott and I discovered a couple of years ago. And that was, so many people come to supply chain from another industry. Silvia, your story is, relatively rare. You kind of leapt right into supply chain right out of school, but it's much more common for people of our generation to have done something else. I had a discussion with Ben Gordon from Cambridge Capital yesterday, and he said, I didn't dream of going into logistics, even though his grandfather had a logistics company. I didn't dream of going into logistics as a kid. I was like everyone else. I wanted to be an astronaut or a race car driver or a baseball player or whatever.
Formula One, yeah.
So I think it's good that people with skills from outside the industry are seeking this, because there is a ton of opportunity in this industry. As you said, Stefan, we hear and acknowledge all the time that technology is a big part of the future. There's still so much manual intervention and so much inefficiency in the marketplace that technology can address. There's a lot. Actually, talking to you has made me realize how attractive an industry this is. This is just something I've done for so many years, but that people are seeking it is really, I think, encouraging for the rest of us who've been in the industry for a while, and should serve as an awakening that things are really happening. As Silvia, you said, there, it's kind of the redheaded stepchild, I guess, if that's the appropriate term for business. It has been, but we talked about how supply chain now has a seat at the table, and more than that, it is in the forefront of the identity of companies these days. So anyway, I applaud you both for doing everything that you've done. Stefan, you especially for seeking out this industry. When I think about mentors, I think you're sitting right next to one, at least on my screen. That's where you're sitting. You're sitting right next to a potential one.
Like the Brady Bunch.
But all right, so aside from the obvious place that you get so much incredibly valuable information about supply chain, and Scott, I can't imagine where that could be, supply chain now. But Stefan, tell us a little bit about books or websites, or where do you get your news or information about this industry or any, really?
Am I allowed to talk about CSCP too or not?
Yeah, sure. We know it's that, right?
No, I gotta say, in the very beginning was the Supply Chain for Dummies. I personally am a big fan of those dummies books, since, you know, they start out, you know, hey, this is how you spell supply chain. Oh, there you go. Yeah. This is how you spell supply chain. It goes all the way into the super detailed, you know, what is Incoterms and what do they mean, you know, things like that. And that's why I'm super impressed with those dummies books. And just in like short 350 pages, you have at least heard about everything. And that tells you how broad supply chain actually is. You know, that's why I always try to say, you know, supply chain is not really an industry. It's like, you know, in between the industries. And that's, I think, also why it's so awesome that so many people are coming from different backgrounds, because supply chain just needs all those backgrounds. You know, you have some, if you have a background in logistics, of course, there's a big logistics part, maybe the biggest part. You know, then I have somewhat a background in finance. You know, of course, there must be finance and supply chain somewhere. You know, and of course, it gets more and more important as any part of supply chain. But yeah, that's how I started out. And then right away, I started the CSCP reading. In between, when I then got the job, I stopped reading it. But I got to say, just by, you know, being on the show here, listening to you guys and reading the articles you guys are mentioning, and then now half a year later, I finally picked up the books again. And, you know, everything is so much more familiar and easier to understand, you know, just by, you know, listening to you guys regularly. So thank you for that. It definitely helps out a lot.
Our pleasure, yeah.
Otherwise, you know, I get Greg's newsletter like 20 times a day. Sometimes it feels like Supply Chain Dive. Oh, another article to read. Here we go. And
I cut it back to once a day because it was getting to be a bit much.
Yeah, once a day is about right. Yeah, I'm not getting any more emails. I'm getting the most emails from you. Nobody else is sending me so many emails, which is good. You know, I always
You're welcome.
Then I'm involved in ASCM and APICS. I'm a board member for the educational part. So I get an email newsletter, then I get the ASCM book that comes once in a quarter with very nice information. Then I try to watch the stream from Ape, you know, the CEO of ASCM. They have very informative things. And that's about most things where I get my information from. And of course, you know, I deleted my Facebook app off my phone and replaced it with LinkedIn. And it did help a lot, I have to say. You know, not just scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, but now it's scrolling on LinkedIn. And there's just so much to read, you cannot even catch up.
Yeah, there is a lot. And I think LinkedIn is doing a so much better job these days of partitioning recognizing what you're interested in and presenting it to you, right? So it's always relevant, always helpful, always uplifting, especially whenever you see a post from Jamin. It's always good to see a post from him every day.
Yeah.
All right, so
it comes out of the words.
Yeah, that's right. So we know, Silvia, you did a lot of your study before school, Realschule, yeah, and then it's been kind of on the job training for you since. So tell us a little bit about how obviously you work to keep up your skills, but how do you keep up your skills? How do you keep yourself abreast of the biggest happenings? And, you know, do you ever do any just recreational reading? And if so, what's that?
Well, I actually do recreational reading, and my biggest mentor or idol, I would say, is Helmut Schmidt, who used to be the German chancellor and born and bred from Hamburg. And he's probably one of those rare statesmen and politicians that actually was inspiring, and he just had a way of thinking that was so straightforward, so typical Hamburg, that I just absolutely adored it. I actually was here when he passed. I had a deal that I had to do in Hamburg, and I was able to at least sign my name, you know, in his registry, which was, you know, really sad. It was in November 2015, actually. But that's my recreational, and I usually only do that when I'm on an airplane, believe it or not. I always have a book with me, and I read a book front to back because that's about the length of the flight. But professionally, even though, and in Germany, they always say, you know, you really start to learn once you graduate your apprenticeship program. That's when the learning begins. And I think I am a true example of that, because over the decades, I have always maintained and furthered my education through, whether it was international maritime dangerous goods, whether it was IATA DG, whether it is CFR 49, whether it's customs regulations, ITAR, export controls, Department of Commerce, et cetera, et cetera. So I always stayed very close and in tune to the business at hand, because being in global logistics, I kind of compare myself to a lawyer, honest to goodness, because you have so many different legalities and rights that you have to adhere to and requirements you have to meet, that it really takes a law degree sometimes to finish a transaction A to Z, especially when you're going into countries that are not considered too friendly or still in emerging markets where regulatory compliance is a huge deal. I mean, to give you an example, when I started out Emotrans in Charleston, I had a shipment going into Tehran, Iran, and everybody was like, have you lost your cotton picking mind? I said, well, let me tell you something. We have an OFAC license. We have everything in order. It's medical equipment. So yes, it's legal, perfectly legal. But, sometimes you got to think outside the box and really take on the challenge and research the opportunity, and not just carte blanche say can't be done. Because what you are basically saying when you say it can't be done, it means you can't do it. So that's always been my attitude. And I like to have those kind of challenges because it keeps me sharp. I like to be on the cutting edge, and on the daily, I read a lot of email, what used to be publications. It started out with the Pacific shipper in San Francisco, going on to the American shipper when I moved to the East Coast. And there are daily updates, shipping digest, et cetera, et cetera. I read everything on the airlines and the airline industry. And I have to say that the Port of Charleston has been a phenomenal resource for me too, personally, because Jim Newsom and Barbara McKelvey, they are just making it a point to really inform the shipping community on what's going on in South Carolina with the South Carolina State Ports Authority. I do the same for the Hamburg Ports Authority. I'm on their email distribution. So I always like to see what's going on in the ports, in the airports, et cetera, in the trucking industry, for an example. I'm very close to my trucking partners just to see what kind of bottlenecks we're currently experiencing in the supply chain. I mean, as you saw globally, we had a tremendous influx of charter flights and all cargo flights, passenger aircraft transformed into a cargo plane in order to keep the supply chain of the PPE going. And, those are bits of information. If you are not up to date with it, you're going to lose in the process.
Wow, that's a lot of studying. I mean, clearly you're well. What did I tell you, Stefan, about a mentor, right? So Silvia, I've been dying to ask. I want to ask both of you this question, but I'm going to give Stefan a little time to think about it. But I'd love to have you give us an example. Helmut Schmidt, of course, very good. Think about when we grew up, Silvia. I mean, when statespersons were still inspirational and thoughtful and mindful, right? Helmut Schmidt, there are just so many. And but think of another leader that you admire or have learned something from, and it doesn't have to be a world leader. It could just be somebody you worked with. So think of who that is and tell us a little bit about what you've learned there.
I actually have a few people on the way that I consider true mentors. And it started out, first of all, my mother and father have always led me down the right path. And when I came to San Francisco, I had a gentleman, Cuban American, who just said, I'm going to have to hire you. You are, and I don't know if I can say the word on on internet radio, but he called me the best bee with a major itch. And he said, I've got to hire this lady. And lo and behold, his name is Fred Chatty. He's now 88 years old. He lives down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I visit him as often as I can, and his lovely wife, Ilona. And they were kind of my U.S. parents, so to speak. And Fred taught me one thing. You know, he had this little company called FNC International, and he gave me the opportunity to move to Charleston and open up his branch. And that's how I ended up in Charleston a week before Hurricane Hugo. But he was always so inspiring. And he always told me one thing. He said, don't ever let greed overcome you. And that stuck with me always. Then the next mentor that I came across was a gentleman named Ethan O'Roney, who actually played for the Australian national basketball team, because he's, I don't know, 6'9", something like that. And he was the global director for route development at Excel Global Logistics. And he heard about me and he said, I got to meet this woman. So he hired me to do German route development. And I ended up being a global director, Central Eastern Europe for Excel Global Logistics. Company I absolutely loved. I loved the team spirit and I loved the culture. And after Excel was sold to DHL, I had a little bit of a cultural clash and moved on. And I actually worked for Jazz Freight Forwarding. And my boss then, who is now the president of Jazz Worldwide, Eugenio Fumo, he just gave me a chance. You know, the one thing that stood out with Eugenio during our interviewing process, you know, he was doing the typical SWOT analysis. And he said, so what are your weaknesses? I said, I'm like Mary Poppins. I'm practically perfect in every way. And he loved that. But I said, what do I have to lose?
So you clearly have been blessed with the opportunity to work for a lot of progressive, forward-thinking, and effective servant leaders. So
Yes.
We'll have to dive in deeper to that as we start to kind of bring things to a close. But thank you so much for sharing, Silvia. Stefan, same question to you. Tell us about what's a one leader you really think of that inspires you to do more and more?
Actually, I had a few along the way. Starting out with my father, he was always very supportive when it came to education. And in the very beginning, he always, started to steer me to be a physician like him. And then when I told him, I don't want to be a physician, I want to repair cars, it was a little bit of a shock to him. But after a little bit of a digestive period, he said, okay, as long as you're good at what you do, it's fine. And that worked very well. So he always supported me in any kind of educational things. And at the first car dealership, I then met, his name is Gerald Siegmund. I was the one who started out being my boss, in the end, my friend. And one of his mottos always was, they can take everything from you, but they cannot take your knowledge. So we're always learning and learn here and, read up on this. So that's one of my mottos. The more you know, of course, but at the same time, you can, so many skills you just can transfer from not just one industry to another, but from one part of your life to another, and it just works. And then I moved on, when I moved over here to the States, then in my MBA program, I met this Michael, who was already in supply chain. He has been my mentor for a while. And then, of course, my soon-to-be mentor, Silvia.
Well, yeah, so it's, the journey and the folks we work for, the folks we work beside, and the folks that work for us. It is such a rewarding part. It kind of goes back full circle to what Silvia started earlier in some of what she shared about how the people, despite all the technology and the infrastructure and the equipment that make up supply chain, people is at the heart of it. And that's at least that's the most rewarding part, people we work with. So I appreciate you both sharing. I really hate, Greg, we knew this was going to be a lot to kind of shoehorn into like a 40-minute interview. So, but we'll have to reconnect with you both. And of course, now y'all have set the bar to be a part and share your perspective and kind of your worldview in all of our live streams. So we're going to have y'all back so we can dive deeper on some of what y'all shared here today. But Silvia and Stefan, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you, because I think you both you're going to have some, at a minimum, some LinkedIn connections that want to connect and learn more. So Silvia, what's the easiest way for folks to connect with you?
Honestly, LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me, and it's Silvia Judy. Easy to find. There are not that many women around with two first names.
And look for Silvia on the highways and byways in her V8 Jaguar, which she really knew. We were talking pre-show about automotives, and Silvia really knows the ins and outs of vehicles. So really have enjoyed it, Silvia. You're a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, your
Thank
pleasure to
you.
talk with.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, Stefan, same question. How can folks connect with you?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn. That's by far the easiest. Yeah, Stefan spelled with an F. Mau, straightforward. If you cannot find me, just wait for your next live stream. I will be somewhere in the comments. You can just click on me.
Good point.
And yeah, that's by far the easiest. Absolutely.
Great point. And I should point out also with Stefan, he's been active in the Insiders community, posing questions for the community to weigh in on, sharing experiences. He had a great post around servant leadership, which really always pulls a heartstring for me. So really admire both of y'all. It's never enough time, but really enjoyed the chance to share you with the rest of our audience, because I admire so many different aspects about your worldview and your journey. So, Greg, just like we thought, right?
Yep. Powerful stuff. I mean, I think one of the lessons here is you have to recognize leadership when you see it, because some of the leaders that both Stefan and Silvia have talked about aren't necessarily obvious, right? And leadership can come from anywhere and anyone. You have to be open to it and accepting of it and recognize it.
Well put. And on that note, we're getting a little feedback here. So really enjoyed speaking again with Stefan Mau, Silvia Judy. Have a wonderful conclusion to your week, although we know our weeks in supply chain never come to an end. But we look forward to reconnecting with you both really soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Wiedersehen.
Cheers.
Oh, that was awesome, Greg. I'm sure that made our team's week. It certainly made my week. It's so funny in this digital age, especially in 2020 with the challenges we have. So many relationships are fueled via digital interactions, but it's amazing how well you can get to know people through the digital interactions, live stream, social media, you name it, and really get a sense of who they are and their heart. And really enjoyed featuring both of them here, right?
That's the most satisfying thing about what we do is we've built this community here, a place for people to come to learn and share, right, and grow together. So, yeah, I'm just glad we can be any small part of putting these great people together and sharing their gifts with the industry and the world.
That's right. That's what it's all about. And in fact, we're going to, and to our audience, thanks so much for the sheer amounts of comments and perspective shared on what Stefan and Silvia was talking to. I know we couldn't interact as much. We knew it was going to be fast and furious trying to spotlight both of their journeys, but hopefully y'all enjoyed that as much as we did. So we've got a special treat here at the end of this live stream, because we have a really what Greg just shared. That is core to what part of our mission, helping to facilitate dialogue and conversations, and whether it's hardcore, supply chain blocking and tackling, forecasting and planning and blockchain. I think we got to have that in every single supply chain conversation by law, right?
IoT there. Did it.
But we also take very seriously our responsibility of facilitating different conversations, sometimes uncomfortable conversations about topics that we're all grappling with. And frankly, we've got to get better at handling and addressing. So with that said, I want to bring in Elba Pareja-Gallagher, founder and CEO of Show Me 50.
Elba. Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome back, Elba.
Hey, I just heard something about blocking and tackling. And so let me tell you something. Sure, supply chain, hardcore, but try to go out there and change the world. You got to have some blocking and tackling there. So
Absolutely. Well put. Out there. So still our #1 ranked most appearances ever on Supply Chain Now.
Your lead right here.
That's right. So to our audience, if you've tuned in to, if you've been following us for any amount of time, you already know Elba Pareja-Gallagher. She's a huge friend of the show. I think she was on the very first episode, some 450 episodes ago. But most importantly, despite all of that, is the outstanding work that she's doing, leading, facilitating through her nonprofit, ShowMe50.org. For the little bit of time we have here, because I bet you've got 8-10 more Zoom calls to go, Elba. We want to talk about a special event coming up that continues our stand up and sound off programming. And really, I'm gonna pull the graphic up, but I want you to share what's the conversation we're looking to have.
So we are absolutely going to engage with these spectacular, diverse, from an industry perspective and from a just education and everything perspective, our points of view on what's working and the great optimism that we feel and that we see with change happening. So, I feel, just the other day I said, I feel like, the tragedy that happened and the lives we've lost, and George Floyd, his death is not in vain, because it has really just energized everyone to stand up and speak up. And so we are going to be talking specifically around corporate America, what we're seeing that's actually changing and what activities are working, right? So everything from what task force are doing to what CEOs are saying and doing, both internal to the organization and the external things that companies are doing. So we're super excited. Also, we will just have come off of another panel that we're doing at this big insurance conference called Dive In. And so we'll be able to chat about that. So super excited. And I'm also doing lunch and learns, using my lunch breaks just like this very strategically to take from my personal time to really devote to this conversation. So thanks so much for giving me the opportunity. I can't wait to talk to you guys. So we're coming up October 29th, right?
28th.
Yeah, 28th, October 28th. It's a Wednesday. And great middle of the week break. So I hope you guys will join us. It's going to be bold, but very actionable and relatable. So we are going to give you some things you can do that can be easy or big, right? So wherever you are, we'll be talking about actions that work and are working.
Well put, Elba, as always. So to our audience, this is, I think, it's the third installment in this stand up and sound off series of programming, and it's all built around while we've got 3 outstanding panelists and a little bit of feedback. Renee,
we love feedback.
That's right. Elba, Renee, and Ania. While they're going to be Anya, my apologies. Thank you very much.
Problem.
While they're going to be sharing a lot of their experiences along the lines of what Elba just shared, it's going to be a really unique 2-way conversation, which is going to, we try to do that in our live streams. This platform we use via the GoToWebinar platform really allows us to really make sure it is even more interactive. So sign up, but the only thing you got to bring is 2 things: open mind and your perspective. That's really what we're after to help fuel a practical, impactful conversation. And frankly, I learned so much from these, and I'm real grateful that Elba brought this concept and brought these panelists together, because I bet this will be one of the best ones yet. And I look forward to my 18 pages of notes and lessons learned, Elba.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
I am too. So to make it easy, we included a link in the show notes, and folks can register. Greg, Elba and I have been dominating this, but I know you're passionate about a lot of things that Elba has shared. What's your take on this event?
Well, I think it's important during this time to be able to focus on all of the things that we should have been focusing on along. I mean, I think one of the concerns that we all share is that this seismic societal disruption has taken our focus off of things that need to continue to be presented and forwarded through business, through society, through the globe, through life, right? And this is one of them. And I'm just so glad that we can share this and that we can keep this in the forefront. This diversity, sustainability, fair and free trade, ethical business standards, all of those things are at risk, frankly, right now. because our focus is elsewhere. And so this is our small effort to try and keep these things in the forefront of people's minds until we can continue to elevate it in, when the new normal there. We've said that also whenever we're back there.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
This is going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So big thanks to Elba Pareja-Gallagher, founder, CEO at showme50.org. Be sure to check out the organization. As Elba mentioned, she's involved in a wide variety of efforts to ensure opportunities for all. So Elba, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Good lunch.
All right. So much. We're trying to jam a lot into this Thursday live stream here today. So we're gonna kind of speed through these last two things, Greg, and then we're gonna call it an hour. So Flow 2020, all about the future of logistics, operations, and warehousing. You have this opportunity here from 6 River Systems and Shopify. That's becoming, if it's not already, a household name. And Greg, it's a free event to attend, right?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of if this environment has brought us anything, it has brought companies the awakening that sharing more and sharing broader is better for them as well as it is for the community. So I applaud the folks at 6 River, and of course, who could wait to hear from the folks at Shopify?
That's right.
They don't even call them e-commerce sites anymore. I think people just call them Shopify sites. So if that doesn't define an industry, I don't know what does, right?
That's right. September 16th and 17th. The link is in the show notes. Y'all check that out. And then finally, we just had Nick and Asif on yesterday with us with Reuters Events. Huge event coming up, Supply Chain USA Virtual 2020. You can hear from 6 keynotes, including these 4 individuals, for free. Right. Sign up for their taster pass, I think is what they're calling it, Greg.
Yes, that's right.
And the link to join up and sign up for this event is in the show notes. And I think we're sitting down. Our part in this, Greg, is we're going to be interviewing Peter with Arla Foods, right?
Yeah. And how about calling it a taster pass when all of these executives are from food companies? I just noticed that. So that should satiate your hunger for supply chain knowledge.
That is right. All right. So if you can't, hopefully y'all have the opportunity and really the pleasure to connect with Silvia and Stefan offline, Elba offline. They're really great people to rub elbows with in this journey that we're all on. If there's something you can't find, you can check us out at supplychainradio.com or shoot Amanda a note, and we'll make sure that to help you however we can. Greg, that is a jam-packed show. I got 103. We're only 3 minutes over. That wasn't too bad.
That's pretty good for us, don't you think?
Yes. For as much as you and I both wanted to weigh in on a lot of things that all 3 of our guests shared, and for that matter, all of the comments and perspective are so much there, but we kind of had to take a leaner approach today, didn't we?
So can we turn the tables a little bit? I just want to answer one question. And that is, yes, Davin, I'm just above a C average, just barely. But I would like to ask for your hot takes, Scott. What are the big takeaways from today's session?
I think one is leaders that empower others, undoubtedly. I think that is it's a must-have in I think these days to effectively engage your team, your colleagues, you name it. So you've got to be able to empower others. I posted something earlier today, and there's a lot of it that was woven in all these conversations, and that's gratitude. We've got something around our household: patience, tolerance, and kindness. PTK every day. And it's kind of cliche. I stole it from a church small group.
Love that though.
Yeah, I think it's something that you can easily remember, and you kind of have those moments where you self-check, right? You check yourself. As busy as everyone is these days, and when I think of the journeys that Silvia and Stefan shared, and what Elba is doing, that that taking a moment and being a little more patient as you try to understand other people's position, other people's journey, the shoes they're in, the situations they're in. I think that is absolutely vital to today's effective way of leading organizations and movements and initiatives. And a lot of that came out here today that really made a mark on me. So that is not a hot take, but it's a genuine take. And I really appreciate the our part in this, because the conversations we have here are, there's nothing like it. I mean, that's why we do it.
Yep. Love it.
All right.
Can I just address one thing, and that
Sure.
is on the PTK every day. You know, I would encourage everyone, as you almost said there, you said it, but not the exact words, seek first to understand. If there is a book that everyone on the planet should read, it is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's not Tony Robbins. It's not Brian Tracy. It's not a Band-Aid or self-help. It's brain surgery that makes you a better person. And that makes that book worthwhile. It is foundational principles that will change your life and will make you a more effective person in the right way.
I couldn't imagine a better way to wrap up the show. So really, on behalf of our entire team here, really big thanks to Stefan and Silvia and Elba for all making an appearance. Big thanks to all the comments and the wonderful engagement from the folks that participated in the live stream. Greg, a pleasure to do these with you. Huge thanks to Amanda and Clay, which do such a great job kind of behind the scenes. They never get enough credit, but we couldn't do it without them. And on that note, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed, open the mind, embrace a new way of looking at things. There's so much out there. So, and we'll see you next time here.